Welcome to part 2 of my Solving Linear Inequalities videos. In this video, we are going to do kind of the opposite of what we did in part 1. In part 1, we were given some linear inequality and we were asked to graph it. Well, in part 2, we are going to be given a graph and it's going to be our job to come up with the inequality. We're going to need to create that inequality just by looking at the graph. Seems difficult at first, but if we remember how all lines on a graph work, it won't be too terrible. So let's get started. When we are trying to create the inequality, we're going to be filling in the red spots in this inequality. I have y, which will definitely have to be a part, x, which will have to be a part. This spot right here is our inequality. That's where the less than or greater than symbols will go, or the less than or equal to or the greater than or equal symbols will go. So we'll have our inequality symbol here. This is the coefficient on our x value, and really this is our slope. I'm going to put an m underneath, because if you're familiar with slope-intercept form, m, the slope, is always next to x. And then this over here is our y-intercept, which is b. So what we have here is the template. I'll call it a template for creating the inequalities based off of our picture. And where we want to start is getting the y-intercept. So we need to see, where does our graph cross the y-axis? So if I look at my line here, alright, it looks like I'm crossing it right here, which just so happens to be 3. So my y-intercept is 3, and I have my first piece of the puzzle. I know that whatever my inequality is, it ends with a plus 3. Now, I need to figure out the slope. The slope, remember, is rise over run, and it tells us how our line is changing from left to right. So I have a positive slope because my line is going up from left to right. I don't have to worry about any negatives. And what I need to do is look and see, how is that line behaving from the y-intercept? I'm going to put a green dot at the y-intercept just so that we can see it a little bit better. So this y-intercept is at a crossing point between this line and the y-axis. So where is the next crossing point? It looks like it's right here. I'm going to put another green dot there. And it looks like the next one is over here, and ending with that. So I just need to see, if I'm starting at the y-intercept, how many up and how many to the right do I need to go to get from one green point to the next? And it looks like I go up 1, right 1, making my slope 1 over 1, or just 1. And if you don't believe me, well, let's try going from the y-intercept to the next point. This is up 2, right 2. 2 over 2 is an unsimplified version of 1 over 1. And, well, we could go up 4, over 4, and I think you get the idea. The slope is 1 over 1. Now I have found the easiest parts of my inequality. I have my slope, I have my y-intercept, but now I need to figure out the inequality. What symbol is going to go here? And remember from part 1, if you watch that video, if it is less than or greater than, we are going to have a dashed line. And if it is less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, we are going to have a solid line. So take a look at our line here. Which one are we going to have? Or which one do we have? Do we have a dashed or do we have a solid line? And hopefully you say to yourself, this is dashed, so I need to use either, whoops, didn't mean to erase that. I need to use either less than or greater than. How can I decide? Well, here's a little trick. If you are in a slope-intercept form and the shading is above the line, I think we can agree this is above and this is below. If the shading is above the line, we want greater than. If the shading is below, we want less than. So this is above the line, meaning our inequality must be y is greater than x plus 3. And you could put a 1 in front of the x if you want to, but I don't need to because it's just 1. And this is our inequality for our line. If you don't believe me, let's check that origin like we did in the original problem. And if the shading and everything over here is correct, the origin will give us a false statement. So 0 is greater than 0 plus 3. 0 is greater than 3. And yeah, that's not true. So we most definitely have a false statement where the origin is, so this must be greater than, not less than. And this is the shading that we wanted. All right, let's try another one. All right, here's our new graph. We see that we have a solid line. We are shading below. So let's get started on finding out our inequality, our slope, and our y-intercept. And just like before, I'm going to put the m and the b here. I always believe the y-intercept is the easiest piece to find. So let's take a look at our line and see where does it cross the y-axis. Hopefully you see that it is crossing right here. We see kind of the dot that I used, and normally you wouldn't have the dot there, but you would be able to see it a little bit easier on your textbook. So this is a -4, meaning our y-intercept is -4. Now we need to find our slope, so as I travel along this line, how am I changing? And the line is negative, it's going down, so we have a negative slope. Meaning to go from this point to my next, which looks like it's right over here, I need to go down first, which I'm going down 3. Let me write this in. So I'm going down 3, and I'm going to the right 4. Well, if I'm going down 3 and to the right 4, that means my slope is a -3, because I went down, over a +4, because I went to the right. And that is our slope here, -3/4. And I have another point here, which, if this is the slope, that is exactly what I should do to get from this point to my y-intercept. Down 3, right 4. So if I start here, 1, 2, 3 down, 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right, I get to my y-intercept. So -3/4 is our slope. Now all I have to do is decide upon an inequality. So we take a look at our line. Is this a solid or a dashed line? Hopefully you can see that it is a solid line, which means I'm going to use either less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. Well, as I told you in the first example, look at what side of the line is shaded when we use slope-intercept form. I am using the side that is below the line. This side is above, this side is below. And if we are below, we use less than. And since it's a solid line, we want less than or equal to. And that is our equation. Sorry, inequality, not an equation. Our inequality then is y is less than or equal to negative 3/4 x plus a negative 4. Or you could write it as y is less than or equal to negative 3/4 x minus 4. These are the same. Plus a negative 4 and minus a 4 are the same thing. Alright, so we've solved another one. With this next one, I'm going to put it up there and I'm going to ask you to pause the video and I want you to try to do this on your own. And then we'll talk through it to finish it up. Alright, let's look at our final example. Alright, here is our final example for this video. We have our graphed inequality down here. And what I want you to do is I want you to pause the video and see, can you come up with the correct inequality that matches this graph? Remember to use the line, its y-intercept, its slope, and whether or not it is solid or dashed to help you get all of your pieces. So go ahead, pause the video, and then we'll go over it together as soon as you're done. Pause the video. Okay, hopefully, if you have done this right, you came up with y is greater than 1/3 x plus a negative 1. That is the correct solution here. Now, let's figure out how we got that. The y-intercept, b, where did the line actually cross the y-axis? We would cross here at negative 1. So this is why our b, our ending piece, is negative 1. From the y-intercept, how did we get from this point to the next? Well, we went up 1 and over 3. Since this is a line that's going up from left to right, the slope must be positive, and we're going up 1 over 3. So we have a positive 1/3. And then we had to decide what type of inequality. Do we want less than or greater than, or do we want less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to? So we look at the line. We have a dashed line, meaning I want to use these over here. And since we have shaded above the line, we use greater than. And that gives us the inequality that we see here of y is greater than 1/3 x plus a negative 1, which, just like the last example, you could write as y is greater than 1/3 x minus 1. They are the same thing. Alright, hopefully you found this video useful and you can now create inequalities just by looking at their respective graphs. Good luck!